All right, call to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Here.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me, most of you do, I'm Sal Bordenero, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Finance. Welcome to everyone in attendance, and I guess you can watch it through YouTube, right, I guess? Okay. Well, the Board of Finance was given a proposed budget that would increase the property tax rate by 8.6%. After our thorough review and working with town management, the Board of Finance made revenue and expenditure budget adjustments which reduced that tax rate increase from 8.6% to 1.9%. The Board of Finance members voted unanimously to move forward with this adjusted budget. One item that reduced our budget quite a bit was that after years of going through a state audit, the town finally received $2.6 million that was remaining on the Berlin High School renovation project. This allowed us to reduce the capital budget that we had in the budget by that $2.6 million and apply it to capital equipment items, priority 1 and 2, equipment and projects, capital equipment and projects. We also did reduce the proposed capital budget by another $1.6 million for lower priority items. So we reduced the general government capital budget a total of $4.2 million. Excluding capital, wage increases were the largest increase to both the general government and Board of Education budgets. The Board of Finance approved 4% budget increases over last year's budget in both groups. The Board of Education requested a 6.45% operational budget increase plus $215K for a new state mandated reading program. The total percentage is 6.86 that Julia will probably show to start off with. The Board of Finance unanimously approved the 4% increase plus the $215K for the reading program. Now that $215K is going to be located in the town budget because it is a one-time expense. The 4% is the highest increase in recent history. Part of the increase considers that the town did receive an additional $1.2 million in education cost sharing grant. Historical performance, budget performance supports that the 4% increase should be sufficient. In the last 7 completed years, the Board of Education has asked for an average 4.7% increase, receiving an average 2.7%. And in every year, there were surplus funds available to either reallocate to other areas or carry forward. And throughout those years, the Board of Education was able to add more staff and introduce new programs. So they did a great job with what was provided. Berlin's per pupil expenditure remains the highest and compares to 6 similar nearby towns. Those towns include Glastonbury, Newington, Farmington, Weathersfield, Rocky Hill, and Cromwell. The town also expects $1.5 million in additional tax revenue from real growth in the grant list. As we continue to bring in more businesses, complete some of our major building projects, and tax abatements drop off, grant list tax revenues will continue to grow. I want to thank all the town and Board of Education officials and managers for their hard work in preparing the budget. Finally, I want to thank the Board of Finance members for cooperatively working together to produce a solid budget. I believe we put forward a fiscally responsible budget that will continue to provide the high quality of services that our citizens expect. With that, I'll turn it over to our new town manager, Ryan Curley, for the town budget presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Bordenero. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan Curley. I'm the new town manager as of the beginning of this year. So I'm going on almost 3 months now. So I just want to say it's been an absolute honor becoming part of the Berlin team here. We really have a great town. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. It's been wonderful. You know, first I started working with Mayor Mark, Representative Veach, and our town council, and then coming into the budget process, I wasn't sure of. I come from a town without a board of finance, so this was a new experience for me. But I really have to say we really have tremendous professionals on the board of finance, and I want to give my thanks to Chairman Bornaro and echo his gratitude to this board for all their hard work as well. It was a lot of nights as they combed through this budget line by line. And next, I want to thank all of the department heads and all of the employees with the town of Berlin. Many of the town staff are here with us in the audience today. And I just want to thank them for their attendance and their passion and their caring. But as a new town manager in the town of Berlin, they've made my life easier because overall the town has been running very, very well. And so you all should be very proud of the government that you have here in the town of Berlin. And so as town manager, it's my job, one, to present a budget to the Board of Finance that we feel is responsible and that will keep the town moving forward. And I believe that's what we've done here today. And as Chairman Bornaro said, the Board of Finance made some refinements to that, and I think that's a good thing. That reimbursement that we received from the state of Connecticut on the Berlin High School renovation allows for more capital investment in the town of Berlin. And so that's something that capital is always one of those items that we prioritize every year, but it's also a balancing act, and we know that we need to keep the taxes in check and make sure that we keep Berlin as affordable as possible, too. So it's always a balancing act. This year was no different, but having that $2.6 million reimbursement did give us the tools necessary to get that capital improvement outside of the normal budget process. So I'm going to go through these slides with you. I'll try to be as quick as possible here, but I do think it's important to highlight how your tax dollars are spent in the town of Berlin. And we take that very seriously. We take spending very seriously in this town, and I know that all of the managers and department heads do a very good job with their budget, and we're only proposing requests that we feel will move this town forward in the right direction. So before we begin, just in case anyone wants to follow along with the slides, the links are here, but it may be easier if you just Google Berlin CT Board of Finance. It'll be, or Finance Department, it's really at the top of the Google search, and you can find the slide. It's right at the top of the page. But if not, we'll just follow along. So I'm going to talk about the overall budget. That is what exactly is included. That's the general government side, your liabilities, your long-term liabilities, debt service, and the Board of Education. We're going to talk about revenue. On the revenue side, where does the revenue that make up the town, where does that come from? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the general government expenditures. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chairwoman of the Board of Education, Julia Dennis, and she's going to talk about the Board of Education budget as well. And I also want to thank the Board of Education because this is a team effort, and I know that the Board of Education has spent many long nights as well combing over their budget as well. So I just want to thank them. So with that, we'll start off with the overall budget. And so I think it's important to just talk a little bit about strategy going into a budget cycle. So Berlin isn't unique to other towns in the state and the country. I mean, we really want to prioritize public safety. That's something that I've heard the town council champion as well as the Board of Finance. Education is critical, as Chairman Bornaro said, funding that. We understand that oftentimes the state will continually pull back funding at times and put more and more on the local government to make up in taxes. But it is important that we fund education. Infrastructure is another component that we're constantly evaluating, and especially in New England, things don't necessarily last forever. We have a lot of old water pipes I know we've replaced in town, and we'll continue to work on that. And then culture and recreation. So I'm new. I will say coming in, the one thing I heard from everyone coming to Berlin was, Berlin loves its sports, and so I'm looking forward to attending some games as spring season continues. But we've made a lot of progress in that area. I know the council and the Board of Finance. We've talked a lot about improving the lights at Sage Park. That's going to be in the capital plan. Parking lot improvements at Sage Park, as well as Willard Elementary School. And so it's constantly an effort to basically, this line is what I like most about this slide, is that we continue to provide services that residents expect, we grow the local economy, and closely manage the town's liabilities. And I think that the town has done a very good job at that, and my job as town manager is to continue leading that as well. So with that, I just want to touch on some of the fiscal year 2026 priorities. You'll see under infrastructure, we continue to fund the school HVAC improvements. I know that Willard has essentially been completed, almost ready to go online, and Hubbard and Griswold should be going out to bid sometime this spring. And so that's important because we have that state grant for some of that funding, for a good portion of that funding, so we want to make sure that continues. I mentioned infrastructure. We have the roofs at Town Hall and our community center. Both need to be replaced. That's funded, and we're making sure that those projects continue. We have to take care of the things that we have in town. The lighting upgrades I mentioned at Sage Park, that's going to be part of that non-budgeted appropriation that I'll get to. And then Timberland Sand Traps, that's coming too. I see our director, Saul, is here as well. I believe Timberland's opening tomorrow morning. Is that right? All right, so I think there's an event at 10 a.m. tomorrow at Timberland. So we're going to keep moving, the golf course forward as well. I mentioned public safety, and this budget calls for additional police staffing. So there would be, in this proposed budget that the Board of Finance has combed over, there's an additional sworn officer that would bring the number of officers in Berlin up to 47, as well as a part-time employee that would be doing administrative work for freedom of information requests. And FOI requests continue to bog down the police department. They come in, there's all the body cam footage to comb through. And the thought is if we can get a part-time administrative assistant doing that, we can get more officers off the desk duty and on the road. So that continues to be a good thing forward. The flock camera system is that's a new police camera system that the town council has voted for. That's part of that non-budgeted appropriation, which will increase safety, we believe, in town, as well as this budget funds part of a fire vehicle, with the other half scheduled to be funded next year as well. So there's a lot of public safety is addressed in this budget, but at the same time, as Chairman Bordenaro said, we try to do a good job at balancing and making sure that there's incremental increases to the mill rate and not substantial increases. Economic development is a big reason why, and that is the town of Berlin has been great to see the grand list growth that we've had. I'll touch on it in a little bit, but I believe it's a 1.78% increase in the grand list from the last year. And so I want to thank our economic development team, as well as planning and zoning, or building department, and all the hands that go into that as well. So we've been very, very lucky with the economic development, but we want to keep that going. So I'll go to the next slide here. We're going to talk about, so the budget that's presented this year before you is a $106.9 million budget, which, as Chairman Bordenaro mentioned, is a 0.58 mil increase over fiscal year 2025. And so I think it's just important to touch on, out of that $107 million budget, what does that make up? Well, just over a third of that's the general government. And so that's your town hall departments, your public works, your parks and recreation department, your public safety, fire department, and all of that. And then you have the Board of Education, which makes up combined 56% of the total budget for the town, as well as long-term liabilities, which I want to give my hats off to the Board of Finance and the Town Council, working with our finance director, Kevin Delaney, and they've been doing a really great job prior to my arrival, working with the former town manager to get those long-term liabilities down. And so I know that's been a priority, and having it at 10% it's a good number to be at, and we continue to make progress on that. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and just to mention, right now the proposal is a 4% increase to expenditures on both the general government side and the Board of Education side. So I think to put things a little bit in perspective, this slide here, it's helpful to show where we've been over the last several years in regards to the budget. You'll notice that aside from fiscal years 2021 and 2022, which those were, if you don't recall, were the COVID years, and we were able to hold a flat mill rate during that time because of, I think, the fiscal uncertainty. But overall, you typically see a 0.38 mil increase, a 0.4 mil increase, 0.65 and 0.58. And this is kind of what you want to see in a town. You want this incremental increase to the mill rate, because what this tells you is, if you look for this year right now, the proposal before us is a 30.79 mill rate, and that's still in comparison to some of our neighbors and throughout the state, it's a very, very respectable mill rate. And we've been able to achieve a great deal of projects and growth and accomplishments in town while keeping the mill rate relatively incrementally increasing. And that's kind of what that's what's attractive for businesses. That's one thing businesses look for when they want to come to towns like Berlin. They want to see that sustainable incremental growth. You don't want to see a bunch of flat years and then all of a sudden get hit one year. And I want to just say Berlin's been very good at the way that they've budgeted. And so, as Chairman Bordenaro said, right now, that 0.58 mil increase, that amounts to a 1.92 increase to your fiscal year 2025 mill rate. And to put that in perspective, the average home in the town of Berlin is assessed at $340,000. And so with the proposal that's currently before the Board of Finance, the average homeowner or family in town would see a $140 increase in their taxes this year from the last fiscal year. So just to put things in perspective, it is a modest increase over the last fiscal year, while at the same time accomplishing a great deal. And so I think it's important to touch on the grand list. This is all of the taxable value of property in the town of Berlin. And as I mentioned before, we did have some headwinds against us this year. And that was due to the way that motor vehicle taxes are evaluated from the state of Connecticut. We switched from an NADA valuation to a MSRP with a modified depreciation schedule. And so that put towns like Berlin a little bit behind the eight ball, and thankfully, we did have a decrease in the grand list on motor vehicle by 8.3%. However, we more than made up for this in real estate with a modest 0.4% increase, and personal property with a 20.5% increase. And so that is a majority, courtesy of our largest taxpayer, Eversource, who heavily invested in the town of Berlin. And so we're beneficiaries of that, because that increase in the grand list amounted to an additional $1.5 million of tax revenue. And so that's why economic development is so important, and we want to promote that in the town of Berlin, is because by growing that pie, we're able to take some of the burden off of our residential property owners in town and still accomplish a great deal. And let's see, I think I touched on everything on this slide. So to move on, just to talk about the drivers of the revenue, where does the town get its revenue? You probably won't be surprised to hear that 87% of the revenue in town that's generated comes from local taxation, so from the property tax, motor vehicle tax, and so we do a good job with our collections in town. So I want to thank our collector of revenue. We have a 99.3% collection rate in the town of Berlin. And so we were fortunate. I did mention that over time the state has taken some of the funding away from towns such as Berlin. But this year we did receive an extra $1.1 million in education cost sharing, which was in Governor Lamont's budget. So that was a big win for the town going into this fiscal year. So we were grateful for that, to get some additional revenue from that. I do want to know 1.7 million roughly of revenue comes from interest for the town. And then we have about $358,000 in non-ECS, non-education cost sharing grant funds, which is revenue. And then we have utilized about $600,000 of unassigned fund balance with this budget. So just to give you an understanding of where the revenue comes from. So I want to just take a moment to talk about what the Board of Finance did. As Chairman Bornero mentioned, so I'm coming in, this is my first budget with the town of Berlin, and I was a little afraid because my initial budget, I think, had a 13.5% increase in expenditures. And I think the Board of Finance did a pretty good job looking at that and utilizing that reimbursement from the state, that $2.6 million, and wisely decided to allocate that to capital. And the town council agreed. And so you'll see, I'll get to it in a minute, but over $2 million is in capital with a non-budget appropriation this year, with even more with some bonding that's in the budget as well. So what did the Board of Finance do? They did make a reduction to the Board of Education. I'll let the Board of Education, I'll let Julia speak to that, but it is that was a $1.5 million decrease to bring them to a 4% increase to the Board of Education from fiscal year 2025, and also a 4%, as I mentioned, to the general government side as well. But that also doesn't include that $215,000 for the state mandated reading program that the Board of Finance, it was important to them to include that, and that's on the general government side as well. So I believe if you include both of those, it's really it would be a 4.4% increase to the Board of Education. They also removed one of the proposed sworn police officers. So the Berlin PD is attempting to get to 50 officers. That's their target based on the research that they've done and the needs of their department. And this budget, as I mentioned, getting to 47, that additional officer gets them further to their goal and allows public safety to remain the priority that it is. They also, the Board of Finance reduced overtime for police slightly, and the thought behind that was with the more officers and that additional part-time administrative role, overtime might not be needed as much this fiscal year. And they also removed some, there was initially $450,000 in the Public Building Commission budget, and this was I believe brought to $175,000, and this is to design, this is to do architecture and engineering work for the numerous projects that we have upcoming in the town of Berlin. So you can still do a lot of work with $175,000, so I think it's important to discuss that. And then I mentioned the capital. So $4.2 million of capital was removed from my proposed budget, the town manager proposed budget, but then I'll get to that in the next slide. And I think I covered everything on this. Oh, I do want to talk about revenue. We did make one change, and that was an increase to the building inspector fees. I see our building official is here with us today, and as I mentioned, because of the economic growth in the town, that office, as well as many departments at Town Hall, have been very busy, and permit revenue continues to rise in the town of Berlin. So we also continue to look for ways to increase revenue outside of raising municipal taxes. With the next slide, this is important because, as I mentioned, funding capital is a need, not just for Berlin, but every town has a need to fund capital. This year was no different. Administrators met as early as October to start combing through the list. They initially had a list of $12 million worth of capital needs, and these are all real needs that the town of Berlin has upcoming. And out of that, the department heads combed and whittled that down to a $4.2 million proposal. And then out of that $4.2 million, the Board of Finance asked us to go back and prioritize. We ranked each one of those capital items from 1 to 3. I worked with the staff and Kevin Delaney to make sure that we prioritize the capital. And this list, and I hope everyone can see this, because this is a lot of capital. I know in the past we've had success at the end of the fiscal year doing non-budgeted appropriations as well, and we've been able to fund capital that way, and we've gotten a lot done doing that. But this is going to allow us to get to work immediately. So there's a town meeting on April 8th. And so if all goes well, there will be $2 million worth of capital items that are approved. So I just, again, want to thank the Board of Finance, Mayor Mark, and the Town Council for prioritizing the town's capital needs, because I think that's really important. We have vans for the school system. I know that's a continual need. Emergency communication upgrades at the school system. The Willard plumbing. I did tour all the schools. I saw the plumbing. It's a big need over there. The boilers. I just want to go through because it's important. Ballast blocks at the schools. I think this is for the solar panels. Am I right, Ashley? Doug? Well, Doug, Ashley. Right? Thumbs up? Yep. We have a senior center bus, which is badly needed. A loader for the highway. A dump truck for grounds. Centrally field, a walkway. This has been a safety issue that we're able to fix. A fire command vehicle, as I mentioned. Repairs to engine 10 for our fire department. A leaf collector at Timberland. A van for our facilities department. A scissor lift. And the Sage Park lighting phase 1. And a server replacement for the police department, as well as funding a local grant match. And funding the local grant match is important because one of the things that the town of Berlin does very well is it really goes after every grant possible. And the goal with that is to get as much state and federal funding as we can to really maximize our dollars and minimize the impact to you, the taxpayers. Included in this budget is an additional $3.5 million in general obligation bonds. As I mentioned before, that includes HVAC upgrades at the elementary schools, a new fire vehicle, the library community center roof replacement project, and then that renovation of the Timberland sand traps that I mentioned as well. So all in all, this budget and the non-budget appropriation calls for over $5.6 million in capital, which is a real blessing to the town of Berlin. So moving on, I'm just going to quickly highlight the general government. So what consists of the $106.9 million in fiscal 2026? Of that, $2 million on the general government side is increased this year. The budget is an increase of $2 million. And so what makes up that $2 million? It's important to note that operations. So I mentioned that $215,000 for the state mandated reading program. That's part of that $908,000 on the general government side and operations. There's also increases to utilities, refuse disposal, as well as professional fees that continue to rise annually. In addition to operations, we have staffing. We do have that new police officer, which is included in staffing, as well as the part-time police department administrative role, as well as contractual updates that happen, wage increases that happen every year. So a lot of the $2 million increase, these are obligations that we have to meet regardless. And so we look for ways to decrease funding elsewhere. We do have debt service that is increasing by $440,000 this year with additional bonding. But as I mentioned, overall debt in the town continues to go down. And that's, again, hats off to the Board of Finance and the Town Council for really prioritizing that over the more recent years. And I think that those are the highlights. I think capital, as I mentioned, I hit capital's down slightly, but there is a police vehicle that's funded in this budget, and our pension obligations are down slightly this fiscal year due to the ADEC being closed. So next, I'm just going to talk on briefly, real quick, on the Berlin water control. So the next slide, I'll just show you what the budgets are for fiscal 26. You'll see on the water side that you see a decrease from fiscal year 2025. This is due to infrastructure work being completed recently. There was a Berlin Turnpike water replacement project that was completed, and so completed under budget as well. So you're going to see that decrease. And then on the sewer fund side, you see an increase, and this is due to an increase in rates from Mattabasset, as well as there's an increase for additional audit and inventory response work in this fiscal year 26. So with that, I just want to note there's no staffing changes in the water and sewer budgets. I talked about the cost increase with Mattabasset. And then there's additional costs for engineering work for the Meriden connection as well. And so we continue to work to fund a Meriden water line connection, and we're going to be working to replace not replace, but we have to repair the tank at Lamentation Mountain. So that's quite a project. It's an ordeal. I could talk for a long time on that alone, but we'll be getting that done as well. And with that, I think I just want to talk on next steps. So after the meeting this evening, the Board of Finance is going to meet, and they will likely vote to recommend to the Board of Education, recommend to the Town Council, the Board of Education, and general government budgets. And so that's going to be immediately following this public hearing, and the Town Council is scheduled to meet on April 1st, that's Tuesday of next week, at 7 o'clock, and that's going to be at Town Hall in the Town Council chambers. And then the budget referendum is scheduled for April 29th, and I'm really hoping for a one-and-done referendum, but I don't want to jinx myself, so we'll see what happens, right? So with that, I want to welcome our Board of Education Chair, Julia Dennis, here to talk about the Board of Education, and we'll take questions after, right, Kevin? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julia Dennis. I'm the chair of the Board of Education, and I am going to be talking to you about the board adopted budget. So I want to thank the members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, district administration. This is a long budget season. Everyone worked really hard to come to this budget based on the needs of the district and the expectations that families of Berlin expect when they send their kids to Berlin Public Schools when they move to this town. So I'm going to start out talking about the superintendent goals for 2025-2026, and this is fully supported by the members of the Board of Education. To provide a quality education, prepare students for multiple options and opportunities, maintain favorable class sizes and course offerings, consistent support of student, staff, and classroom technology, commitment to a safe learning environment. And all these are achieved through the budget. So Berlin's mission and core values, and again, fully supported by the members of the Board of Education, and we collectively come together, and this is driving our work as we set the budget and as we determine the needs in the district. We empower our students to be enthusiastic, curious learners and kind, compassionate leaders in our community and the world. And our core values are purpose, passion, and pride. With purpose, we understand our goals and why our efforts matter. Passion, we inspire passion for learning and foster meaningful, caring relationships. And pride, we act in a way that cultivates pride in ourselves, our school, and our community. And as I go through this presentation, I just wanted to start with the mission and the core values because it's really the driver behind our budget and our decisions. So this right here is the pie chart of our 6.86% board adopted budget. And this right here just shows the breakdown in pie chart form. Now I'll show you the stacked bar graph because I feel like this is what we often discuss. So I want to start out with thanking the Board of Finance for working through budget season with us this season. I know it is a long season for everyone, and everyone puts a lot of work in. And at your last meeting, a 4% has been discussed and recommended. But then with also the science of reading, the state mandated reading curriculum, that $215,000 being funded through the town side really gives us the 4.41% increase. So it is not, the 6.86%, and we do have the 1.5 million decrease. The 4.41 will give us enough to work with to really continue fulfilling our mission and core values for Berlin Public Schools. The Board of Education, we are going to be talking about what the board has adopted. We are not going to be talking about any proposed cuts. The board is not meeting until the end of April, so it's going to have to go through the committee after the town council votes, so the Finance and Operations Committee, and then we will, it will be on our agenda for our meeting, I believe, April 27th or the last week of April. So after April vacation, so today is not going to be going through a list of potential cuts or where we might cut. It's just presenting what our board has adopted, supported by the mission and the core values of Berlin Public Schools. So as we get into this, I just want to talk a little bit about what this stacked bar graph represents. So you can see 4.37% is our staffing and contractual obligations, the red. Our contracted services and utilities is 0.56%. And as it was just discussed with the town, contracted services continually go up. And it's a cost that just keeps increasing, and it's reflected here. Our transportation and tuition, that's magnet schools, supplies, equipment, and all other expenditures is 1.19. And then the top, the orange, is the 0.41. The state mandated reading program, the $215,000 will be paid out by the town. So it's good that we're all working together to address that one-time cost. So I will continue on. So these are our major budget drivers. So the state mandated reading program, like we just talked about, I addressed that. That's the 0.41%. Technology and equipment, it's important to mention that we don't have a technology replacement cycle. So where we are, in 2025, technology is a necessity in schools to make sure that our students are independent learners that can enter the workforce and society well adjusted and ready to go into multiple careers and engage in different opportunities. Therefore, technology is critical. So we don't have a technology replacement cycle in this budget or in any of our budgets. So we fund technology like updated Chromebooks or teacher computers or other things technology related that need to be replaced that's all funded through end of year funds. So with that surplus throughout the year, we carefully save where we can save to make sure that any surplus, we're funding technology. And I think this is very impressive of Brian, Ashley, and the central office staff that they're able to do this and fund technology in this way because this can be a big driver in a budget. The staffing accounts is our largest driver. Our people and programs are the biggest part of the budget, and then that's why, if you go back to this, The red is the biggest part. That's people and programs. Really, families, students, teachers, everyone in the educational community relies on the people and programs within Berlin Public Schools. And then the last piece is materials and repair and maintenance costs. This is the smallest driver. We're going to have to deal with this as, a Board of Education and determine what from there is going to have to get eliminated. But I'm not going to speak on behalf of the board until we have that opportunity to meet and really go through it. I want to talk a little bit about special education and the percentage of special education budget. Those who have been, attending these meetings over a number of years or have attended them throughout this budget season, you've seen this slide, but I just think it's important that you see about a quarter of our overall budget, our general education budget goes to special education. That is mandated. We don't have any wiggle room on that. The number of outplacements we have, so when a special education student needs to be outplaced in an alternative setting, Berlin Public Schools is required and mandated to pay for that. That can have a significant impact on our budget. And, our mayor and the chair of the Board of Finance has said, if you come into a situation where this is going to throw off your budget and you're going to be out of money, please come talk to us. So that may happen at some point because as we talked about with contracted services, utilities, and everything else, the costs are just going up. And one outplacement can cost anywhere from $65,000 to $200,000 plus transportation. So that can have a significant impact, and the Board of Education really does not have much say in saying, no, we're not going to send your student there. We have approximately 20 outplacements. We have 3 potentially pending as we speak, and 5 may be considered, in the near future. However, I think it's really important to talk about when we look at that stacked bar graph, we look at the red part, and we talk about the people and programs that, make up the Berlin Public Schools and education community, are major budget drivers. We do a number of things in Berlin Public Schools to bring this cost down, to bring the special education cost down, and I think it's something that Berlin has done an excellent job. Linda Holian and her staff have done a very good job at making sure that we have programs in Berlin to bring kids back. We have Effective School Solutions, ESS, so it might come at a high price, but it allows us to keep kids in districts and not outplaced. We have the Transition Academy, so we can keep kids here in Berlin and not send them out to other transition academies. And then also we have our paras and our staff and a number of other programs. We have I'm not going to get into all the programs, but we do a lot of different things to really keep this cost low, and I think that's really a special thing that Berlin does do. So, as I continue on, our state funding has decreased, over the years, if you look, and I know that with this current legislative session, there's different talk about what's going to come out of it. I was at the Capitol last week and I think the week before during public hearings about the funding, and it's just interesting to see how it's all going to get funded, especially with potential federal funding that we may see a reduction in, and how that will then be funded. So we've had a decrease in state funding and federal funding. The Open Choice program is a program that we've always used to support our budget, and I believe all open choice districts have seen a decline in enrollment. This has really allowed us to get extra money to put staff on. This grant has allowed the Board of Education to do a number of different things to support our budget, to keep costs low, but we've seen a decline in choice students. It's not specific to Berlin or anything Berlin Public Schools does. It was really after the pandemic. I think transportation issues with all of the choice students, and it just, choice students were starting to stay in their own district, at their neighborhood schools. 10-year budget funding history. So this right here shows you what our budget funding history is. The 25-26 is a little bit higher because when we initially proposed this, and I'm just going off of the board adopted slides, this shows a 7.4%, but then we were, with some changes to the science of reading, the state mandated reading program, as well as now, it coming out and the town covering it, that brings us down to, around 6.4. But then you can see that with the 4.41, if, the Board of Finance and Town Council vote, it will bring us higher, which will be very much appreciated and will allow us to really, we're going to have to make cuts, but it's going to allow us to continue to fulfill the promise to all the Berlin parents, students, staff, and overall education community. The neighboring districts adopted budget comparison. I know this was already briefly touched on when Mr. Bornero was up here, but this is just a snapshot of some neighboring towns, and you can see where Berlin falls. There's a number of ways to look at this data. You can look at it by DIRG, by surrounding towns. Data is data, but I think it's just important to show where Berlin falls in comparison to these towns mentioned. We are at the bottom at 3.21 in our, so. And then this is our fiscal year 25 budget percent increase for DIRG D. We are at the 3.21, and you can see the DIRG. So those are all towns with similar demographic and socioeconomic composition. The state has kind of moved away from DIRGs, but they still haven't really. So it's a good comparison to look at when we see where we are coming in at. And then the next one is our net current expenditure per pupil. So you can see where DIRG D and the state comparison fall with Berlin. Berlin's net current expenditure is $21,719. The state's is $22,836. So we do fall below the state net current expenditure. And this is our historical net current expenditure per pupil. So, you can just see where this number is with Berlin, the state average, the wealth rank, and the NCEP rank. And this is our 5-year FTE comparison. And you can just see here for the 2025-2026, there's only going to be one anticipated change. And on our last slide, we have 2023-2024 recognitions. I think it's important to note a few things. So these recognitions are important to highlight because the staff that we have an excellent staff who's truly dedicated. We have the funding to support our schools. Berlin is a place where people want to send their kids to school, where people want to come and work. We're able to recruit high-quality educators and paras and custodial staff, secretarial staff, so on and so forth. This is a school district that, I know I am truly proud of to be a part of, and I know Brian and his staff are proud of, and the Board of Education is. And we've worked really hard at making sure that, we have favorable class sizes, that we have excellent options and offerings for all different types of learners. So we're not sending students out to magnet schools or, other types of choice schools that they can go to, because that costs Berlin Public Schools money. So if we start reducing our options and offerings to our learners, they can go to magnet schools, technical schools, agricultural schools, and Berlin has to pay that amount. One thing we did keep, so typically in our budget, we hold $100,000 for the tuition and transportation for the magnet schools with school choice that Berlin children can attend. We did not include that in this budget this year. Favorable class sizes is critical. It's of critical importance to the learner, to the teacher, to the overall dynamic of the school for all stakeholders in the education setting. We typically keep a kindergarten teacher placeholder in our budget because that can change, and we did not keep that in this budget, so it's not reflected. So we come with this budget without anything extra. We come forward with exactly what we need to drive our district forward. And I think it's just important to highlight all the great things that our district is doing and all the great things that our staff is doing for the kids and all the opportunities for the students. So we will take questions, and thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Julia. And thank you, Ryan. All right, so we're going to take any questions. Come up to the mic and state your name and address, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask a question.
Donna Bove, 85 Steeple View Drive. I'm on Parks and Rec Commission. I'm just wondering, is there a list of other capital items that aren't budgeted for that you have for people? And specifically, I'm thinking about the splash pad that we're hoping to do at some point in the town over in East Berlin. I know it's a large amount of money, but is there a thought process of how we might be able to do it at some point? Not in this budget, it's not there. But are we looking at surpluses right now for this year that maybe we can get some money for that? Or is this going to be a 2026 budget item?
Well, I mean, Kevin, you could answer, but from what we did look at is that there may be some design work that has to be done, in this current fiscal year that we may find money for, but we think it's going to take a little longer than just the upcoming fiscal year to get in place, in terms of, I don't know if do we have a quote yet, or I don't? Huh? You want to speak to it? Sure. Yeah.
That's a good question, and I'll just say, Mayor Mark is here. I know that the East Berlin pool and modifying that into a splash pad, that has been a priority for the town council. It's something that I think the town is committed to doing. The question is, how do you pay for it? We have some estimates. We have some numbers that have been presented to the council, and we're going to look at how to fund that. But it's not in this fiscal year budget, but I do believe that will be coming. And the question is, will we be bonding? As you mentioned, will we be looking for non-budget appropriation? We'll be working with our finance director, Mr. Delaney, Kevin, who's got all the money. We'll figure out how to get it done. But I do know, just give us a little time to figure that out, okay? Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm a little short. Good evening, Imelda Mangelo, 86 Devonshire Way. I'm just curious as to what it would take to fully fund the Board of Education, especially given this year where there are state funds coming back, and not all of them are going back to the education. I appreciate where the Board of Finance is today at the 4%, because it is a lot more than what has been given in the past, but it's still not fully funding the Board of Education.
Thank you. Well, I mean, we look at it as a balance, in total. And we have to look at, balancing Board of Education with all the other expenses. And we felt that as a Board of Finance, the 4% that we provided, plus the $215K for the reading program was reasonable. And as I mentioned in my introduction remarks, historically, the Board of Education has done a good job with what we provided, including having, remaining surplus left over. Sure, they use it for technology or whatever, but if you look at historical experience, 4% is the highest that they have received in the most, in many recent years. So We feel comfortable with that, and unfortunately, we don't know what adjustments the Board of Education is going to make, but clearly, from a Board of Finance standpoint, we feel comfortable with that. Anyone else? Okay, I mean, oh,
Cornell Boudria, 115 Skinner Road. What are your projected surpluses for fiscal year '24 for general government and Board of Education?
well, we don't project any surpluses for Board of Education. I think the latest status report has us with a potential $800 to $1.2 million of potential surplus from the general government side. But see, these are the things that we normally, we're talking about the splash pad, for example. These are some of the things that we have to look at. We also, limited the capital priority 1 and 2 capital items, so there may be other items that may come to fruition that we have to worry about. So this is an initial list. So we normally use that surplus money to accommodate primarily the capital. So, anyone else? Okay. I want to thank everyone for attending. When I saw the parking lot when I first came, I said, well, we're going to have a lot of questions, but nobody's here, so, but make a motion to adjourn. Second. Those in favor? Aye, so moved. So thank you, everyone.